Hey guys, I'm Sean Stone.
And I'm Jay Bates.
And this is another episode of I Get Email. Today's question is from Michael, and he asked, what was the deciding factor in going with the 10-inch 3/4 horsepower version of your Turncrafter lathe over the 12-inch 1 horsepower version? This is one of those deals to where I came from a beginner lathe and it didn't have anything on it, so the reason I started looking for a lathe altogether was just to get some more convenience. But
yeah, he used to have a Harbor Freight lathe that did not have any quick release. You had to use a wrench for everything.
And so it was just not convenient at all. So that was the reason I was looking for a new lathe initially. And so after looking at it, I wanted the variable speed, but the reason I went with the 10-inch 3/4 horsepower versus the 12-inch 1 horsepower is this one would do everything that I want it to do. So I was mainly turning, and still am, just mallets and spindle turning pins, that kind of thing. Not really into bowls yet, so I didn't really see that I needed a bigger, the
larger capacity
swing over bed or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you could still turn a 10-inch bowl on yours.
Yeah.
And also the experience he had with my lathe, I have a older model Jet, I think it's a 1014 VS, so it's variable speed, which he did like, and then the 10-inch is the largest diameter bowl you can turn, and then the 14 is in between centers. And I do have the bed extension as well. But the thing with mine is the motor on mine is only a 1/3 horsepower.
Yeah, and so I used Jay's lathe when we went to Skytook, Oklahoma, and I knew that it would do the job. So this one, the 3/4, I knew would be more than enough for what I was doing.
So yeah, for your needs, upgrading to the even larger one is just unnecessary for what you want to do.
Yeah, and plus, I can also get a bed extension for this particular lathe. And even if I buy that, I still have less money if I just bought the 12-inch model.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all in all, this was the perfect fit for me with where I am with my turning.
Yeah, and as far as I'm an advocate of buying your last version of that tool and not continuously upgrading. Well, in this case, as far as the benchtop model lathes go, there's a ceiling of what you can do on them just by their limitations in size. So jumping up to that extra benchtop model really wouldn't offer much when maybe in the long run your end goal is to have a nice floor standing large full size lathe. If that's the point, then that larger benchtop is even further middle ground that really won't benefit much anyway.
Yeah, and also
for what he does anyway, and me too.
Yeah, and I will also say that I'm not a huge turner. I don't turn all the time. And so splurging just a little bit more for a bigger model really didn't make sense to me because I'm not turning
that makes sense.
all the time. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
So, I mean, I could save that money and put it towards something else for a different tool.
And the second part of that question is, Jay, maybe you can talk about your lathe, and does the need to get a larger one ever arise? The need for a larger one, I wouldn't say it's a need, because just like Sean, I'm not primarily a wood turner. I find the lathe to be more of a problem solver. If I need something that is produced on the lathe, then that is the appropriate tool to use. It's not like my go-to kind of enjoyment tool.
Yeah.
So as far as what the limitations of that smaller lathe, it's bowls. I've cut a few, or I've turned a few 10-inch bowls on there, 9.5-inch bowls, and it's fun, but there's definitely a limitation with the size of the lathe and the size of the motor. Obviously, I can do a maximum 10-inch turning, but with that size, I've actually bogged it down quite a bit trying to turn. So as far as bowls, I would recommend, if you're wanting to get into larger bowls and such, just skip the whole benchtop lathe and get an actual bigger, nice floor standing or something substantial, full-size lathe.
Yeah, I see a lot of guys that, have the floor standing or the bigger lathes. They're doing a lot of, big diameter turnings.
Yeah.
So I guess it really depends on what you actually need, but that was my decision or deciding factor why I went with this particular model.
Yeah, I like my lathe and the size of the lathe that I have for spindle work. It's fantastic for spindle work, even with the 1/3 horsepower. But if I ever want to get into bowls, it's going to be a larger lathe situation.
Yeah. Okay.
But hopefully that answers your question and just gives a little bit of feedback on our perspectives with lathes. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.